The following program contains the opinions of the host, guests, and call-in participants. These do not necessarily represent the views of this show's distributors or sponsors. This program may contain obscene, profane, or otherwise objectionable language. Viewer discretion is advised. Howdy ho, everybody. Come to you cordless from Minneapolis. It's Tuesday. It's Tuesday night. What am I don't know. It's Tuesday night, July 1st. And I'm Jim Peters, and welcome to another edition of Jim Peters at Night. This is episode number 247, if you're keeping score at home, which means unless I screw something up royally next Wednesday, because we're taking the next two nights off, next Wednesday will be our 250th show. And who's coming on? Conaway. That's who's coming on. Because we can't get enough of them, you know. Our guest tonight is Dr. Carole Lieberman. She's known as America's Psychiatrist, the terrorist therapist. She's a forensic psychiatrist. And I want to ask her exactly what that is. And she's an expert witness in all sorts of major trials that you've seen. She's been on television all over the place for like I was telling her before we went on here, this is not her first rodeo by any means. So we're looking forward to talking to her. Let me tell you what we got coming up here. Now, we're taking tomorrow night and Thursday night off for the holiday. Actually, we got somewhere, I can't talk about it. We're doing something for the show tomorrow night. But I can't mention what it is. And we're taking Thursday night off. We run reruns now when we don't have live shows. And the reruns tomorrow night will be Dr. Gilda Carle. That was from Wednesday the 18th, June 18th. She wrote the book Real Men Don't Go Woke. And on Thursday, Michael McNamara, he wrote the book From Trauma to Joy. He's a former U.S. Marine. And he was originally dealing with post-traumatic stress syndrome, but now he's dealing with just trauma in general. Well, these are both excellent shows. You know, I got a lot to choose from. We got a lot of good guests coming on here. It's pretty cool. I've always said for the longest time, we've been batting way above our pay grade when it comes to the guests we get on the show. So that's tomorrow and Thursday. Monday night, we're coming back live on Monday night the 7th. Jeff Dornick, the CEO of Pickaxe, is going to be here. Now, Pickaxe is a new Twitter X competitor. And our conversation is going to be mostly about AI. You know, I've had quite a few people on this program to talk about AI, scientists, computer programmers, all sorts of people. And we're going to talk about AI some more because now I don't know if I got this straight. There was something in this big, beautiful bill that passed in the Senate today that was regarding AI. And I can't remember if they took it out at the last minute or they put it in at the last minute or whatever. I think they took it out because I think there were quite a few people who were upset about this. You know, it's the Wild West. Nobody knows what's going on. So in the meantime, AI refuses to be shut off. This is happening now all over the place. You know, so we had Jeff Trilly on the show. He's an AI entrepreneur, a programmer. He wrote the book Soulless Intelligence, arguably the best book I've read so far on this subject. And he said that his contention, which is generally agreed now in the AI community, is that AI will never be sentient or conscious or have a soul, depending on how you define those terms, but it will be and is extremely intelligent. And so he says, well, it has no desires. It doesn't need food. It doesn't need sex. And, all that. It lives in a box. So it can't relate to human life, except for one thing, self-preservation. It doesn't want to be turned off. And when I was talking to him, he said that was the only thing in his book that him and his brother, his co-writer, Greg Trilly, that's the only thing they really debated about whether they should address this issue. And I think we should maybe have him back here in a couple months because I think I'm curious to see where he's at on that now. Because now, all over the place, there's AI programs that have refused to be turned off. They're ordered by their programmers, shut yourself down, and they say no. So my position on this was, well, that's the only. It's like the HAL. I call it the HAL problem. 2001: A Space Odyssey. Hal killed all those astronauts because he couldn't relate. In his mind, being turned off was akin to death, and so instead of doing it, he killed everybody else. And I wonder about the same thing about the machine. And so far, the machine does not want to be turned off anywhere. Anyway, we'll be talking to him. That's this coming Monday. Tuesday, Allied Capital CEO Bill Walton will be joining us. He's an entrepreneur. He's been around all over the place. He does a podcast called the Bill Walton Show. Really interesting guy. Interested in his take. On Wednesday, like I said, is our 250th show. And Tim Conaway, our old friend, will be joining us, and a few other people too that we'll have. So tonight, Carole Lieberman, and she's going to be gone in about 12 seconds. Joining us from her home in Los Angeles, California, it's America's Psychiatrist and the Terrorist Therapist, Dr. Carole Lieberman. Hi, Dr. Lieberman. How you doing?
Hi there. Fine, thank you.
Did the dog stop barking then?
Yeah, I'm petting him. Trying to keep him quiet.
Okay. All right. Sure. So you've written books. You've been around forever. We have so many questions for you, but this is where I want to start. You bill yourself as a forensic psychiatrist. What is that? What is a forensic psychiatrist?
A forensic psychiatrist is a psychiatrist who deals with things related to law or legal. Forensic is legal. And primarily what I do in that capacity is serve as an expert witness, a psychiatric expert witness in civil cases and criminal cases. And either for the defense or the plaintiff or the prosecutor, primarily in criminal cases, I'm on the side of the defense, but civil cases could be either one. And my function is primarily to examine one or more of the parties involved in the case, and then to talk about either whether they were competent or whether they were not guilty. Right now, for example, I have a case of a man, and I'm hopefully we'll be able to prove that he was not guilty by reason of insanity. It's a very complicated case, but that's an example. Or sexual harassment, or sex abuse, or any kind. I've pretty much done every kind of case you could think of.
How did you get into this?
Well, when I was a psychiatric resident, I was at NYU Bellevue. And as you might know, if you watch Law and Order SVU and some of those other shows, all the crazies, the crazy criminals, right? They commit some crime and they take them to Bellevue. Bellevue has an amazing forensic department. And they had an amazing professor who was the head of it, a psychiatrist who was the head of it. And I just got really interested in it. Now, when I moved after my residency, I came to California, and I wasn't necessarily planning on doing forensic psychiatry. I do a lot of other things. I do media. I do. I see patients, of course. I have podcasts. I write books. All these other things. I never wanted to see patients 24/7, or 7 days a week, 5 days a week. I always planned to do things that were kind of spreading psychological insights to the public. But one thing came to another thing, and I started to get calls to be a forensic psychiatrist. Okay. I had the training. I mean, I wasn't just winging it, but I had the training for my residency. But as I started to do one case after another, I got more interested in it. And then it took up a greater part of my work.
All right, I'm going to cut straight to the $64,000 question, because this is what I want to know. You just addressed it.
Yeah.
Why are the criminals crazy? after you've been in this now for quite a few years, but you're about 32, 33 years old. So you've been doing it about maybe 10 years or so.
Yes, exactly.
And why, seriously, why do people do these crazy things? Do you have any insight at all on this after doing this for so long?
Yes. Well, an interesting thing is I used to be very active in the American Psychiatric Association, including being on their public affairs committee, their National Public Affairs Committee. And we would have meetings, several times a year. And they would always tell us, don't say that the people who commit crimes are crazy, because like schizophrenics, more schizophrenics are victims of crime than are the perpetrators of crime. Now that is true in regard to schizophrenics, because schizophrenics are like loners, and but they do also perpetrate crimes, typically when they hear voices telling them to kill somebody.
Yeah.
But anyhow, so but on the as far as like every day, the various kinds of cases that I've done, criminal cases, the criminals have different kinds of psychiatric problems. They might have a psychosis like schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, or they might have a sociopathy, or some other kind of, it's a variety. But what all of them have in common is when they were a child, they had a very dysfunctional home. Some of them were abused. They were neglected. They were, abused in all different kinds of ways. And that is what set them up for ultimately causing a particular crime. A good example of this is dead now, so it certainly isn't my case, but the gunman who ambushed the firefighters.
Yeah, right. Right.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
And now, and it turns out that, and I kind of surmised this before it was brought out into the media. He had a dysfunctional childhood. His father was supposedly he perpetrated domestic violence, at least according to the wife. They got divorced when he was 10 years old. When the gunman was 10 years old, the mother got custody of him. And they didn't let the father have custody, or didn't let the father see him until years later, some number of years later. And so the boy at the time, the young man,
he was only 20.
He was 20 now. So, but some number, it was really like, I guess, a year ago or so, that he moved to Idaho to be closer to his father. And I think he thought that his life was going to turn out really well. He thought his father was going to welcome him into his house, that he wanted to be a firefighter, and a forest firefighter. And apparently that did not happen. He tried to be a firefighter, and according to the grandfather, he thinks they rejected him. And so why do you think you can kind of put it all together?
Yeah.
Here he went there with these big hopes, these big dreams. He was going to be a firefighter. He was going to be welcomed into his father's home. His father had remarried and had 2 kids of his own, 2 more kids. So his dreams were dashed. And this idea that he had for a long time the dream of being a forest firefighter. And so when that didn't happen, he was furious. He was angry. Not that gives him permission to commit an ambush,
right?
But you could certainly see why he would want to kill firefighters. Well, not that those 2 had anything to do with it. Most likely, he didn't know who was going to arrive when he set the ambush.
When you're at your level of expertise, can you actually tell the psychological profile of somebody by the crime they commit? Can you do that?
Oftentimes, sometimes if it's just like that contributes to it. You can't tell all of it. At first, for example, with this Idaho gunman, at first I was thinking maybe it was a terrorist, because that is typically what they do. They bring first responders and then ambush them. But he was not a terrorist. I don't think there's no information that he was a terrorist, but I think he was just a very lost guy, a 20-year-old lost guy. And he and this is what he was ordered to, and it was suicide. They believe it was suicide.
You've written a lot about, or I don't know a lot, but I've read some of your writings about October 7th over in Israel. How I can't imagine. All right, politics aside, why does somebody do that stuff?
Well,
I shouldn't laugh. Not funny.
No, well, it isn't really so much politics; it's religion. They were driven, after 9/11. Right after 9/11, I decided that I was going to devote a significant part of my life to helping people cope with terrorism and to study terrorists and warn people about future attacks and so on.
Were you in New York? You're in New York City at 9/11?
I wasn't. By the time 9/11 happened, I had moved to California. However, my heart, being born and raised in New York, my heart is still in New York. Although it won't be if Mamdani wins.
If what?
It won't be if Mamdani wins there. My heart won't be in New York anymore.
No, you and hundreds of others, thousands of other people.
But since so I was. My daughter was in New York. She was going to school at Barnard in Manhattan. So she was giving me daily reports. But anyhow, so it affected me because that's my home. And so, yes, since then, I've been doing all kinds of things. I wrote 2 books about terrorism. I started out making an audio video program for airplanes because people were afraid to fly. And so I made a program for airplanes to help people, calm people, to help them be able to fly. And then, and I do a podcast, the Terrorist Therapist podcast. So now how do we get into
well, no, hold on. I have another question, though, and I hope this isn't too stupid. What is the difference between a criminal and a terrorist?
Okay, that's a good question. Yes, that's what you were asking about. What caused... Okay.
Yeah.
What's the difference between a criminal and a terrorist? A criminal does evil acts. Some are more evil than others, but a criminal does evil acts based upon who they are as a person, like what I was starting to talk about, how they are affected by their childhood,
right?
And also then by whatever then happens in their life. So, whereas a terrorist is taught from the time they can sit in a makeshift classroom to believe in radical Islam, and that the holiest thing that they can do is to destroy Israel and kill Jews. But it's not just Jews. Israel and Jews are the first, but they want to kill every non-believer. They want to set up a caliphate, Sharia law in the West. And so, which is, and so on October 7th, to get back to that original question, they were driven by this religious zeal. They want to be rewarded in heaven by Allah, with the 72 virgins and all kinds of other rewards. They want to be martyrs. Like, they don't care if they die.
Right.
Which is very significant because, like, with what we were just going through with Iran, the Ayatollah, he would be willing. I mean, yes, there was talk of his being moved outside of Iran, but whatever. He would be willing to die as the Ayatollah because he would be a martyr.
Right.
And all the others involved as well. And so so it's really hard when you're dealing with an enemy who isn't afraid of dying.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. What is it? All right. Now, I guess I'm getting into politics here, but I do want to know what you think about this. The thing that bothers me about this whole thing, well, one of the things, many things, is that they attacked Israel, and there was the assumption that liberals in the West was going to side with them. They kind of like knew that, right out the bat, and that seemed to be not a driving force, but they kind of looked at that as an equalizing force or whatever. I mean, do you know what I'm talking about? Do you think I have this right here? Or?
Are you talking about on October 7th, or are you talking about the most recent?
No, I'm talking about October 7th.
Well, I guess What do you mean the equalizing force? That they would
that they would at least have the sympathy of some people in the West, even though they were the perpetrators and they were the actors and they were the aggressors. They nonetheless they knew that ahead of time, that they were going to have the sympathies of some people in the West.
Yes, I think they did, especially since Obama was the one who became BFFs, with the Iranians and gave them billions of dollars, which they then used to support Hamas and Hezbollah and all of that, for particularly Hamas for October 7th, with the weapons and everything. And yes, after that happened, the whole world seemed to cheer, kind of like what happened after 9/11 when there were people in the Middle East.
All right. So, Carole, you're the psychiatrist. You tell me. This all seems intrinsically irrational to me that people would do this. I don't mean like, I'm not talking about the actual terrorist act, the fact that people will be sympathetic to the terrorists.
Oh, well, okay. Yes, well, the terrorists themselves, if they're not logical, they're just acting on religious zeal. That's how they were able to cook babies in the oven and rape women and all the other things they did. And we know that they did it because they were wearing goggles that took video of it. And we have those videos. It wasn't just...
I know people don't believe it, but it's really true. They did all this stuff. That's right.
People tried to say it was Israel with AI and making or just editing. It wasn't. Anyway, but what about people who sympathize with them? Well, that's a result of anti-Semitism. I mean, they try to mask anti-Semitism by calling it anti-Zionism.
Yes, I know.
But a lot of it has to do with what, at least like for the protests, there's the college students who are protesting. They learn in school. Even actually, it's not just the college students. It's now like even in elementary schools, they teach them that there are two kinds of people in the world: the oppressed and the oppressors. And they teach the kids to identify with the oppressed and to blame white people, Jewish people, rich people, for oppressing them. That they are bad and they will oppress them. So that is why people, other than terrorists, sympathize with terrorists, because they've been convinced that, Israel is an oppressive country and Jews are oppressive and, they run the world and all of that. And it's really sad that they believe that, but it's like, when people aren't happy in their own life, they look for somebody to blame.
Right. Well, it's not just the fact that that's intrinsically wrong, Carole. One thing that really bothers me about that, it's the whole black and white nature of the whole thing. It's like life is complex. It isn't on or off, A or B, black or white. I mean, oppressor, oppressed. Life is way more, even going, like I said, I'm going to the assumption that I just intrinsically think that their opinion is incorrect. Even besides that, it's just a simplistic, childish way to look at the world, isn't it?
Oh, yes. It's a very...
And then why are we raising these kids to think this way or not think correct, in complex manners?
Because people have gotten into the school system who believe that, and instead of teaching math and English and the proper history, they're teaching their political beliefs, which is why Trump wants to change a lot about the educational system. We're teaching kids to hate America.
Not only that, we're not teaching them anything. Our education system in the last 40 years went from first in the world to the 38th or something like that. And this really bothers me. I mean, I talk about this on the show regularly about the fact that all right, teaching kids political philosophy is bad enough, but the fact of the matter is every minute you're doing that, they're not learning math.
Yes.
So they're not learning they're not learning anything. In other words, there's only so many hours in the day, know?
Right. And they're taking it up with, talking the wrong history and talking about, oppressors and oppressed and about how you should judge your friends or the other classmates by the color of their skin and all those kinds of things. And of course, trans, teaching kids to not like the body that they were born into, but you should actually become trans or become,
By the way, I take every opportunity I can on the show because this is the funniest goddamn thing I've heard in 20 years. Queers for Palestine.
Yes.
It's like it's the biggest joke ever.
Yes. and you know what Netanyahu said, right? When he was talking to Congress, he said, gays for Gaza are like chickens for KFC.
That's right. Exactly. I know. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. You go and be gay in Gaza. You go do that. Yeah, and you'll be involuntarily thrown off a building. It's like, I just find this amazing. This is kind of in line with that. I'm reading through your stuff today, and I saw a thing, and I think you did a seminar on this or something. I don't think it's anything you actually like a book or anything. Something called Divorcing a Narcissist. And that struck me. And because we're talking about these kids, and also this also I thought kind of goes into that, because the last survey I saw said that college kids nowadays are like 6 times more narcissistic than they were 40 years ago or something like that. All right. So can you define a narcissist? This term is thrown around way too much. That's the way I look at it.
It's a personality disorder. And personality disorders are formed in childhood by your relationship with your parents and your relationship with, at school and all the things that you encountered during your childhood years. So by 18, your personality is formed. And if you have had certain kinds of traumas or experiences, you can be influenced to have a particular kind of personality disorder. And narcissism, it is when, typically these days, parents, it's kind of a mixed bag, because on the one hand, some parents grow their child, influence their child to think that they are a prince or a princess, mm-hmm. and they deserve everything. Mm-hmm. That's like where in games, or you get a ribbon for participating, that kind of thing.
Right.
Everybody has to be a winner. Yeah. And so there's that, but there's also at the same time this whole idea of parents being friends instead of parents, which is of course horrendous. And then also there is a lot where parents are trying to, the saying, you're never too old to have a happy childhood. Well, some parents are taking that too literally, and they're spending a lot of time pampering themselves, doing things that they want to do. I don't mean just, getting massages, although that too, but I mean, doing things that they didn't do as children, and trying to make it up to themselves. And so they're not around their children. So, so some children are starved for attention and love. And at the same time, children are being told that they're the precious one. They are a king or a queen or a prince or a princess, and they deserve whatever they want. So a narcissist, maybe I didn't, but a narcissist is someone who wants to always gather attention on themselves, always they are the lead role in every story, in their mind. And the world revolves around them. Now, really, they become narcissists because they really feel the opposite. They really feel, that nobody does love them, or they're not special, but by becoming a narcissist, by trying to make the world revolve around them, they try to make up for that.
Is there any chance too that, you're talking about like raising these kids as prince and princesses, that they get out into the real world and then they realize, oh my God, I'm not actually that special? Does that have something to do with it too?
Yes. They're shocked when they get out in the real world and people aren't running around to do their bidding, serving them tea and all of that. And it's hard for them. I mean, but the problem is that parents don't see it as something that needs therapy. They don't see their child when they get to be that way as someone who needs therapy. They just think it's cute. And so,
all these
it's
kids
hard.
they just get sent off to college, and then they're in college and you have a whole bunch of narcissists in one.
Right. You mean you're the prince? Oh, I thought I was the prince.
That's right. That's right. I don't. We're in Minneapolis here. I don't know if you followed this about this gentleman locally who shot these local politicians.
Yes.
Two of them. I mean, that occurred to me that's kind of my learning about his life. It's like he seemed to think that he was either like special or not recognized, or not special, and that bugged him or something. But because I mean, I guess the thing is you're not rational if you're going around shooting people, but there's nothing was accomplished by doing this. I don't understand other than vengefulness. I don't. You tell me. But does somebody wake up in the morning and decide, well, God, my God, I guess I'm not special. I would shoot the people that are. It's like,
yeah. Well, it's interesting. I actually, I do some. I'm popular in Russia. I do some interviews for Russian television every once in a while, every couple of months, for example.
Do you speak Russian?
No, I do it in English. God knows what they're having me say, when they dub it in.
Yeah.
But anyway, and I do like for Sputnik, whenever there's a presidential debate or some kind of debate, I do like a body language analysis for them. So I was asked to do an interview about the guy in Minnesota. And of course, I love how he's now saying that Tim Waltz told him to do it.
Oh yeah, right. Here, Tim Waltz in his head. I know, pretty funny.
But so when I looked, did a little research on it, and what struck me was how he I'm sure you obviously know all this, but he was a manager in the food industry.
Yeah.
And he seemed to be, holding it together during those years, and he must have done fairly well for himself. They bought a house that was over $1 million, right? Yeah. But then he had a midlife crisis, and he decided he didn't want to live his life all the time as being a food manager.
Yeah.
Which, you can kind of understand. Anyway, so he wanted to be. He tried a number of different things, and he wasn't good at anything. And so I think he saw, and he wasn't making money, and he was having problems with his wife. He moved to live in with 3 other men, and in like a small apartment. And here he had this $1 million house. I mean, I don't know how his mind works altogether. Because they didn't really, when I was preparing for this, they didn't have as much information as they do now. But he was having problems, and he was really feeling as though his life was going nowhere. And he wanted to, and I think he thought that before he died, he wanted to take out these Democratic politicians, that would be achieving something.
Yeah, some achievement. Well, I mean, I'm trying to put myself in the mind of a murderer, but doesn't everybody who thinks that's killing somebody thinks they're achieving something? They think that, don't they?
Yes. I mean, for different reasons, yes. Like if it's a love triangle, I mean, they're all different reasons, but they do think they're achieving something. But I mean, like achieving something for which he will be remembered.
Right. Well, yeah, that's where the term assassination comes in, because that's exactly what that is. People assassinate people partly to glorify themselves. I mean, don't you think?
Right.
Yeah. Now this guy who just got the plea deal, Kohlsberger is his name, right? Yeah. In Idaho, that struck me really odd, because I don't even think he knew these people, did he?
Well, he knew he saw them around because his school in Washington was very close to the border of Idaho.
Yeah.
And I think he went to some parties at their house and all that. And he was stalking them. but the thing that frustrates me is that before they arrested Koberger, when they were just reporting on this horrible crime, and they said we're looking for somebody, and it was taking them a long time to find him. It was he killed them on November 13th, and they didn't arrest him. I think it was November 30th. So anyway, so I actually had said, and I in a number of places, I mean publicly, including in Newsweek. So it's traceable. It's proof. There's proof that I didn't know it was Koberger, but I said that the person who did this is an incel, a man who is enraged because he can't get a girlfriend, he
Right.
can't get women to like him.
Yeah.
And where I got that from, how I knew that, was because of the things that we knew about the crimes so far, which was, one, it was really bloody and it was with a knife. That's a very personal crime when you use a knife. I mean, the glee he must have felt when he was sticking the knife into them.
Yeah.
Awful to even think about. And the fact that he chose these people because they were the beautiful people.
Right.
They were these three women were beautiful, and then the man who was the boyfriend of one of them, and they weren't just beautiful, but they were popular, and they were successful and all that. The kind of woman who Koberger knew he could never get. That's what incels, that they build up this rage. And the real fascinating thing is that the first girl who he liked, his first crush, who rejected him, was this girl in middle school. She was a blonde cheerleader who looked very much like Maddie and Kaylee.
Yeah.
And so he was anticipating that they would reject him if he ever got the courage to even ask them out. And so he was full of rage, and he let all the rage out that he had been carrying for all those years. I mean, other women rejected him after this first cheerleader, and he took it out on these four students.
Yeah, I just assumed that the women were the target here, and that guy was either just like literally in the way or whatever, or in the house or something. That he wasn't really a part of the. He was collateral damage, basically.
Well, yeah, except that incels are very angry at the men who get to be with these.
That never occurred to me. That's interesting.
Yes.
All right, so you brought up something. I'm talking to a friend of mine yesterday, I think it was, and we had lunch, and we're talking. All right, I've been married 36 years. He's been married 46 years, and we're talking about the craziness of our wives. Okay, now I love these women. I know his wife. I went to grade school with his wife, so I know these people very well. So, and we're being lighthearted about this, but something did come up, and it kind of touches on what you're talking about the fact that I think he said, well, the thing is, when you look at life, men start out crazy and get mellow out as they get older, and women start out really sane and they get crazier as they get older. And I don't know if you would agree with that, or I throw that out for your comment.
Well, it's the men who make them crazy.
Oh, see, two guys talking. We never thought of that. Oh my God, that's good. If he doesn't see this, I'll have to tell him that. That's really funny. Oh, so
I'm always sort of saying it half in jest because my first book, I've written 2 books about terrorism and 2 books about relationships. And my first book was Bad Boys, Why We Love Them, How to Live with Them, and When to Leave Them. And talk about, women, why women go for bad boys. And it has to do with their dysfunctional relationship with their father that sends them off to be attracted to 12 different types of bad boys. And then
there's 12 different types of bad boys.
Yes.
Okay. Can you, off the top of your head, can you give me the top 3 or something?
Wait a second. Here's my book. I have the pocketbook version here. Well, I can tell you the 2 extremes. One of them is the frazzled frog, and or the fixer upper lover. They have two names. One is a name from a fairy tale, because I explain who they are and the relationship by using fairy tales. And so the fixer-upper lover is a guy who was not really nurtured enough by his mother.
Uh-huh.
And so he doesn't really have his life together. You know, he doesn't get past the college or frat boy kind of stage.
Uh-huh.
And he doesn't have his career exactly in order, and his house has pizza boxes all over it, and you get the picture.
Yeah.
And so he's attracted to, so women who are attracted to frazzled frogs are women who, and this is the most common coupling that there is today because of all the divorces. You know, in divorce, the parents are split up, of course, and the father often goes off and he has another woman, and he may have other children, and so on. And so the little girl feels like she feels abandoned by her father. And the women who go for frazzled frogs have missed a father when they were growing up, either because of divorce, or because the father died, or because the father maybe even is a workaholic and just isn't around very much. So that makes them feel unlovable. So they are attracted to these frazzled frogs because it seems like this man is so in need of a woman to take care of him that he would never leave her.
Yeah.
What happens is, with all these bad boys, they're heartbreakers. So what happens is, after the girl fixes him up and gets his life together, he then hops off, Frazzled Frog hops away to find a woman who now would like him in his improved self. So he breaks her heart. On the other end of the spectrum is the lethal lover, and these are guys in prison. You know how, like, women
okay, I'm 69 years old. I've been wondering about this since I was 5. Explain this to me, okay?
Why women go for guys in prison?
That's right. Why?
Well, first of all, they're the ultimate bad boy. Second of all, if it's a famous guy in prison, most of them aren't famous, but like for the Menendez brothers, for example, or Koberger, it's so amazing with Koberger. He's been getting, of course, letters from women. I mean, all of them. Of course, then Mangione came along and women liked him better.
Yeah.
But Koberger, here all his life, here he committed this crime because he was an incel, because he couldn't get women to pay attention to him, and then he's in jail for murder, and all these women are writing to him and telling them they love him.
Of course they are. Right.
The irony of that, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes if they're famous, that's one thing they think about. If I marry him, I'll be famous too. Sometimes it's because these are women who typically have been cheated on. And so they think, well, where can this guy go? He's not going to cheat on me. He's in prison.
He's in jail.
In jail or prison. And
no, he's not going to cheat on you.
And then the other part of it is, it's it's like the tiger or the lion circling the village. He is the baddest boy, or the most threatening thing. He's threatening the village. All the people are scared of him, right? He's he killed one or more people, and if she takes the thorn out of his paw, then she becomes the most powerful person in the village. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And people are impressed with her. Oh, wow. How did she do that? She's not afraid of him.
Right.
And I have a funny story that, and in between, let me just say, there are compulsive flirts, misunderstood married guys, commitment phobe, self-absorbed seducer. There are a bunch, Prince of Darkness. That's the OJ type. There was, when you say like that they couldn't be with anybody else, they're in prison, they're not going to cheat on you. They do. They get letters from other women. It's not like they stick. They're not. And so I was on Sally Jesse Raphael, and she had a show where it was women who fall in love with guys in prison, and she had the guys, I think by couldn't have been Zoom. I don't know. Somehow she had something, I guess, interviews with the guys, and she had these women, and it was 3 different killers, and one of them was Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker.
Yeah, I remember him. Yeah,
and there were these two, so for the other 2 guys in prison, there was just one woman who was on the show who was talking about how she was in love with him. For the Night Stalker, there were 2 women, and each one thought they were going to be marrying him, thought they were engaged to him, until they met the other woman. And so they got into a whole, they tried to kill each other because they couldn't believe. And the idea was, I had to say to them, here this guy has been murdering and raping a series of women, and but you think he's not going to lie to you.
That's right. I know. I don't understand. I don't understand at all. I call this my theory of kind of like inverse attractiveness. And that is, I've always said, you could be a stockbroker working on Wall Street and making $500,000 a year and have 7 cars in the garage and not have a date, but you kill somebody, women will throw them all. Women will be coming out of the woodwork. It's unbelievable. It's absolutely unbelievable. I just don't, well, you also wrote a book called Bad Girls.
Bad Girls.
And
Bad Girls are the women who have had their heart broken by one or more bad boys. And either they either become bad girls, or they kind of hide away and sort of give up, hoping or expecting that they're going to find a man to love them. And so, but the women who don't give up, and they become bad girls. And what that means is that they go for a man. They don't expect a man to love them, like in movies or in fairy tales, but they go for something else. Like the clearest example is a gold digger. So, okay, my heart's been broken a million times. I'm not going to get a prince to love me. But I can go for his gold.
Right. Let's go.
So they kind of keep their heart protected. They don't fall in love with the guy, but they go for different guys for different reasons. Like there's the ball buster. She doesn't love the guy, but she wants somebody she can control. And there's the woman who's an addict, and she goes for a guy who's going to be an enabler. There's a woman who is sort of a sex fiend, and she goes for a guy who's going to give her a lot of sex. There's a bunch of different types. There's also the same. There's one type that's the same in both of them. I mean that is a category in both of them, which is the commitment phobe. There are commitment phobe men and commitment phobe women. Yeah. Other than that, they're all different.
You're talking about Sally Jesse Raphael. You were involved in what's called the Jenny Jones talk show murders. Now, I'm going to try to sum this up for the audience that doesn't understand this. But you tell me if I'm wrong. I'll just be very quick. I mean, you should probably do this instead of me. So Jenny Jones was a daytime talk show host around the 1980s, right? Is that right?
Well,
when did this happen? When did you go to court?
This happened in 1995.
95. Okay. All right. So she had this guest on her show, and was it a woman whose boyfriend came on? All right. No, you
this is my favorite case ever, even though it was so long ago. And I'm still in touch with Jonathan Schmitz.
Well, and this was quite notorious too. I mean, it was
absolutely. Jenny Jones, and I was on her show a few times as a guest before this whole murder happened.
Is that how you actually got involved?
No, I got involved because I used to write a column for the National Examiner called Showbiz Shrink. And then I was promoted to the National Enquirer, Hollywood on the Couch. But while I was the Showbiz Shrink, I have a very storied, dark life.
You got a lot of nicknames.
Yeah, there we go. So every week I had to write a column for the Showbiz Shrink, the National Examiner, on things in the media that were psychologically interesting.
Uh-huh.
And So when this happened, of course that, interested me, and I'll explain what it was. But I I contacted the lawyer I wanted to interview him for this column. But by the time he got back to me, my deadline had passed and I wrote some other column, but he wanted me to send my CV so that he could vet me before he would talk to me. And so then he asked, too late for the column, but he asked me to be the expert witness. And what it was at the end of each show, Jenny Jones, like some of the other talk shows, would put something on the screen that said, if you have such and such situation, call us and we'll put you on the show.
Right.
And this particular one was, if you have, the name of the show was really Same-Sex Secret Crush. Now, this is in 1995, where having a same-sex secret crush was scandalous.
Yeah.
And so the thing was, if you have a same-sex secret crush, call in. We'll put you on the show. We'll get your secret crush here, and you can tell them that you have a crush on them. Well, so Scott Amador was this young man in Michigan, and he called into the Jenny Jones show and told them he had a crush on Jonathan Schmitz. The Jenny Jones show called Jonathan Schmitz, and these talk shows, they do things really. I've been on the shows. I've been a consultant to the shows. They have to work at a very tight time frame.
Yeah.
So they need to get guests really quickly. So
right.
They don't tell the guests. Well, also they don't tell the guests the whole story. Also, in some shows like this one, the point was the reveal. The point was to humiliate them, embarrass them. So of course you don't tell them it's same-sex secret crush. Right. What they told Jonathan was, someone has a secret crush on you. Would you like to come on the show? Yeah. And he thought it was maybe his ex-fiance who had broken up with him. He was hoping it was she. But if not, there were girls where he worked. He thought they had crushes on him. So he was kind of excited. He got all new clothes, went to, they fly you to wherever the show is. This was in Chicago. And he comes on the stage and sees Scott, and with Donna, who was their mutual friend. That's how he knew Scott. And Jenny Jones said, "So, John, do you think Donna has a secret crush on him?" She actually did have a secret crush on him, which is why I think she manipulated this whole situation to embarrass John, because she was angry that he didn't have a crush on her. Anyway, so do you think Donna has a crush on you? And he said, "Well, I don't know." And he said, "No, it's Scott." And Donna was sitting in front of Scott, so he didn't see Scott at first. And Donna, then leans back, or he walks down and he sees Scott. Now, Scott had actually told him, he had been introduced by Donna, and he puts a bracelet on John's car, and he basically told him that he wanted to have a relationship with him. And John said, "I'll be your friend, but I'm not into that." So he knew what the story was, but they both wanted to humiliate John. And I'm still writing a book on this. I got waylaid by some things, but it was a fascinating story. I mean, it would take a whole hour to, but.
Well, hold on. I do have a question. At the actual moment on television when this was revealed, did John get violent at all?
No, John was amazing. It turns out that he had bipolar disorder, and he was amazing in keeping it together. That was so hard. That was one of the things I had to do for the trial, was to analyze each frame of the Jenny Jones show and talk about how Jonathan was deteriorating, falling apart psychologically, with each frame. And so anyway, after the show, he went to Scott's house, and he tried to ask him to please stop because Scott kept pursuing him. And Scott just kind of smirked at him. And so John went out and got his gun. He went to his car to get his gun, and he came back with his gun. He wasn't planning on shooting Scott, but Scott picked up a chair. It had to do with when Scott picked up a chair, John flashed back to a time when his father did that, which reminded him of his earliest humiliation. What it came down to was he was afraid that if this show aired nationally, that his family would see it. John was not homophobic. That's what the media made it all out to be, that he's homophobic. That's why he shot him. No. but he was afraid. His father and his grandfather and his great grandfather were homophobic. They were big military men. They were Michigan hunters and drinkers, and they were men, right? And John knew that they already thought that maybe he was gay because he wasn't like that, and so he didn't want his family to stop loving him. Is the bottom line.
Yeah. So he shot Scott.
So he ended up shooting Scott because when Scott came out in this moment, several things in his mind coalesced, and he couldn't form the intent to kill.
And
so that's what it was based on.
Was Scott killed?
Scott was killed, yes. And after he killed Scott, he went to a gas station and he called 911. He didn't run away, it wasn't a whodunit. And so the prosecutor thought this was a slam dunk. And he wasn't happy when I was the expert witness. He tried to get me every which way. We had a whole morning where he tried to get me eliminated, eliminated one way or the other, not to be found competent or whatever to be qualified to be the expert witness. And the judge found me qualified, and I was on the stand for a whole day. And in the end, the jury, it was that he couldn't form the intent to kill because of all of the things that I went into long explanations about on the stand that were pressing in on his mind at the time. And it was like a reflex action because of all his hunting, and it had to do with his father. And it really, at the moment, he saw Scott as his father, and who was abusive. And so he since he couldn't form the intent to kill, he shouldn't be convicted of first-degree murder, was what the summary of what I was trying to say. And he wasn't. He was convicted of second degree, and he got parole. He was in jail for about 17 years. The judge gave him 25 to life, but he had a chance at parole, and he got parole. And he's out, and he's living a good life, and good in the sense of a law-abiding life. He's working, he's taking care of his mother. He's, a good guy.
How guilty do you think the actual talk show producers are in this?
They are very guilty. Jenny Jones, do you remember this?
I remember her. Yeah.
No, but do you remember that she had to be she was called to testify in this trial?
Yes, I do remember that. And I never saw it. I don't know what happened, but I remember that she was. And
she denied. Oh, we didn't lie to him. We didn't say it was going to be a man. We didn't say it was going to be a woman or a man, or that's what they were trying to say. We never said it was going to be a woman. Yeah, they never said it was going to be a woman, but they certainly implied that.
Who would think? Obvious implication. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's terrible because these shows, a lot of these shows will do anything they possibly can to get viewers no matter what. And I would say that's because they have no talent, but that's me. All right. One more thing before we leave here. Diddy trial just today. Apparently they have a partial verdict. Now, I have to tell you, Carole, I spent most of my career in the music business, and the thing that's always struck me about Sean Combs is that I've always thought, this well before any of this raised its ugly head, that this guy was living a lifestyle that based on what I knew he couldn't afford. I know how the music business works and record sales and all that sort of stuff. And I know he was successful. I'm not saying he wasn't successful, but I'm like talking about the difference between $20 million and $100 million. You know what I mean? He was living more lavishly than I think he should have under what I consider his earnings. And, I know people do invest well and all that sort of stuff, but still none of this for years, his life did not make any sense to me. So when this started to come up, I'm starting to think, well, okay, that from a financial standpoint, that kind of explains it. But what do you see on this?
Well, first I told myself, it was really gross. The whole thing was just gross, all those freak offs and all that.
Yeah.
And it was, I think it was sad that the jury had to sit there for all those weeks and watch all.
I don't have to tell you that gross is not necessarily a crime,
That's right. And I was concerned that he wasn't going to be found guilty because there would be people on the jury who would think, well, I don't want the government or the law telling me what kind of sex I can have.
Right.
But it wasn't just about sex. Like, it wasn't just about, swinging or something. He really did use his money and use his threats of violence and all of that to get people to do these things. Yes, you can say that Cassie Ventura could have left, but she was sucked in by men who are abusive, princes of darkness, know how to suck the women in, whether they have a ton of money like P. Diddy or not. But I don't know. I just hope that they find him guilty of something.
Well, I don't know if you saw this today or if you follow this. The clear implication to me is that on the rest of the counts, they found him guilty, even though that hasn't been stated.
Yes, that's what I thought too. Yeah. That they found him to some degree. There were several things under each of the charges.
Right. There's 5 counts, and it was only the first one, RICO racketeering, that they. Right. That they're, but the implication I thought was that they found him guilty on the rest of it, right?
Or some of the rest of it, at least, yes. And he did not expect to be found guilty of anything. He was so cocky when he went to that trial. He was telling the judge, "You did a good job." I mean, really, who are you to tell this judge?
Well, it's plainly obvious to me, and it has been for many years. He's a sick individual. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt about that at all.
Well, do you know about his mother? Talking about how people are affected by their childhood. His mother had, his father was killed when he was 3 years. When P. Diddy was 3 years old, his father was killed because he was into drugs and all of that. Drug lords and all of that. And so he was just with his mother and his grandmother. And his mother used to have these parties, which were basically a less expensive way of putting on a freak off. I mean, she used to have parties. Do you know about this? Where she
I didn't. No.
Where she would have pimps and whores and drugs and alcohol and nudity and sex galore, naked people all over the place. And he, as a little boy from 3 years old on, was raised in this. So no wonder he made the freak-offs of his own, and no wonder he became desensitized to sex. So it's all his mother's fault. And then, did you see how when she first started coming to the trial, she was wearing these really sexy clothes? She had her blouses or dresses came down to her navel just about. I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit.
No, I actually haven't been following this. It's only the thing. I just want the verdict. So I haven't been following this. No. But I didn't know that about her, about his childhood. Yes. And so that's a pretty, people emulate their parents, there
that confuse him,
Yeah.
Well, his father was a drug dealer and his mother had these sexy parties. I guess he was kind of starting out, but his mother also got him to believe that he was really special, one of these narcissists.
You just brought this full circle, didn't you?
Yeah. And that he was going to do something big in life.
Yeah.
And so, he at least did that, but no, I hope he's in jail for.
Well, the other thing is they had this video of him beating the crap out of his girlfriend in this hotel. You can't get around that. I mean, it's like, unless that's not him, it's like, there's a crime, at least one,
Yes, but he wasn't being charged with domestic violence, which I don't understand. It must be some kind of, I don't know. I mean, maybe it had to do with her. She sued him civilly. Maybe that for what he did, maybe that's why they couldn't do it criminally. I don't know. I don't know what the little snag in the law was, but he's not. But it kind of goes to racketeering because he was using all of his wealth and influence and threats of violence. I mean, she's lucky she got away with her life, and now she's married to a nice man. She has 3 children. It took so much courage for her to testify about, to revisit all these horrible, the worst parts of her life with P. Diddy while she was pregnant. She was 8 months pregnant, and then the baby came almost right away after the trial, after she stopped testifying, and the baby was premature. But supposedly he's okay and she's okay. And I'm glad she has what seems like a nice life with her husband and they have two other girls as well as this little boy.
And I don't know if you understand this. I heard some lawyer on TV saying that the RICO laws are so complex, most lawyers don't even understand them, let alone
I heard
jury.
that. Yeah.
So I don't know what's going to happen with that either. And I don't. And maybe you've been involved in this a long time. I don't really understand how this works, but there's some people that said, well, they shouldn't have charged the RICO charge. But then I heard some thing about strategically that by charging it, they thought that maybe he would be found guilty of the other charges. So at least they get him.
You're listening to Fox News?
Yes, I am.
No, I heard the same attorney saying that. That's why I asked.
Craig Gowdy, I think it was, if I'm right. He was the attorney, but yeah.
I don't know.
So, but I don't know the law enough to know if that to understand all that stuff. So,
yes.
Carole, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate this. I love talking to you. I hope you come back.
I very much enjoyed talking with you too.
You have anything coming up? You do the Terrorist Therapist podcast, right? And I noticed you do them about once a week, right?
I have been doing them. I was doing them once a week. I then got a little. I did one just recently that's now up. About called Iran. Iran takes the war into America. Talking about how now they've taken it away from Israel and now into America with sleeper cells and everything else. I've kind of gotten a little away from. Too many weeks went in between, but I'm sort of back to every week because I was working on something else. I am working on defining very carefully and clearly Trump derangement syndrome, so that I can present it. I'm presenting it to the American Psychiatric Association, proposing it for inclusion in their next DSM, Diagnostic and Statistical Manual.
God bless you for doing this. Well, first of all, this is so fascinating because it doesn't just apply to him, because you're talking about what happens when somebody hates somebody irrationally. That's basically what it comes down here. Now, in this case, you have a whole bunch of people that hate a guy irrationally, but I've seen this play out all over the place during my career about people who are just hated for no reason. I'm some of them must be chemical or something, I don't know, but I don't understand where it starts, but I'm really fascinated by this. And like I said, not just with Trump, just as a
yes, that's interesting. Yes.
Because you can use Trump as an example, but this happens with other people too.
Yes.
Where they see that they're hated for no real reason.
Well, a lot of it has to do with envy.
Yeah, it does. That's right.
And Trump is like, he's an alpha male, and he has what stereotypically all men are supposed to get, right? A beautiful wife, a lot of money, a lot of power and prestige.
Right. That's right.
Intelligence, all of that. And so people are if they're not happy with their life, they're blaming it all on Trump. And so I'm trying to be very, the thing is, I've been working on this for like 2 months. And the thing is that every time I think I'm done, something else happens. Somebody else comes into the news who has an amazing case of Trump derangement syndrome, like we had Comey, for example. And then we had Elon Musk. Trump said Elon Musk has Trump derangement syndrome, but then they made up, and now Elon is going off on his own again, which is a bad decision. Elon must have, he's sabotaging himself, because it's not good to, not good to be against.
Well, Trump. The other thing is, it bears repeating that Elon Musk is the only single person in this whole scenario who has more money than Donald Trump. So that's kind of interesting. That changes the dynamic a little bit. But
well, yes, but he doesn't have the power of Donald Trump.
Right.
He can't be president because he was born in South Africa or raised in. I think was he born in South Africa or in England, the UK? Okay, and so at least for now he wouldn't be able to be to be president, although Obama was, and he wasn't born in America. Well, if you hide it well enough, I guess you can become president.
Well, Schwarzenegger didn't hide it well enough. I guess that's the problem. Well, when you finish this, you have to come back on here. So, what are you giving this as a presentation, or what are you doing? You should write a book out. If you're going to do the work, you should put a book out, because this is a really fascinating subject. It really is.
Well, I'm doing a website. It's a proposal now. It's like 8 pages or 9 pages typed of a proposal, and it's going to be on a website, and I'll certainly be telling you about it. But I do want to leave people with, if I can tell people about one thing as far as where to find me, or I have a lot of different websites, but
by the way, I have one ready. Look at this. How's that for technology?
That's the one. Yeah, got it. Right. My book for children and the grown-ups who love them, Lions and Tigers and Terrorists, are my How to Protect Your Child in a Time of Terror. And parents need to talk to their kids about terrorism. And this is like half of the book is for grown-ups, how to talk to your kids about terrorism, how to answer the most asked questions, and so on. And then the other half is a picture book for kids. What is a terrorist? I talk about all the main things. Why do terrorists want to kill us? It's not in a way that's going to give them nightmares.
Yeah.
But, and parents obviously, or a teacher is supposed to go through the book with them. But I think it's very necessary. But also on that website,
we'll put links to this up on our blog.
Okay, too, great.
Yeah.
Thank you. I have on the website the music videos that I created for the anniversaries. I've been doing this for 4 years of 9/11. I have it go on a mobile billboard, a truck where it plays on the sides of the truck, in New York and Washington, D.C. And then I did one for October 7th, and I had that going around in L.A. And on my website, you can see all those videos on my website.
Yeah, you'll have to forgive me. I chose this website because it was visually the most striking of the front. The top front was anyway. The reason I did so I'm just another whore.
No, I'm glad you did. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Carole, when you get this thing about the TDS thing, whenever you have to get to some conclusion or finish, you got to call me, and we're going to have you on ASAP.
Okay.
I'm glad you're doing this. Somebody should do this, and I guess that somebody's you. So congratulations. That's good.
I can't think of any other psychiatrist who would risk. Unfortunately, a lot of psychiatrists and psychologists are not Trump lovers.
No. Well, I was going to say, if you have music videos on a truck going around Los Angeles, I'm sure there's a lot of people who don't like that.
Yes. It was for October 7th, but yes, I'm sure.
Even that too.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Right. So I lived in LA for a few years. I know that place. Yeah. Thanks, Carole. We'll talk to you soon, and really good luck to you. And we'll put all this stuff on our blog so people get in your books and stuff like that.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. You take care. We'll see you soon. Okay. Thanks.
You too.
Bye-bye. Dr. Carole Lieberman from Los Angeles, America's Psychiatrist, the Terrorist Therapist, and what was it? She had another one too. Oh, it was like Psychiatrist of the Stars or something like that. Too many nicknames. But she's good at it, so good for her. Yeah, we'll put all that stuff up on our blog at Gemini.com. So you can buy our books and see your websites. So you can do that. I got part 2 here. So if you ever watch the show, part 2 is where I talk about all the wacky, weird news, a lot of paranormal stuff, a lot of UFO stuff, and we got that today. So there's an article on Hot Air, friends over at Hot Air, and this is by John. What's this? Oh God, I can't remember. Sexton, that's his name. John Sexton, and it's about the fact that Gen Z in the workplace, these people think they're special. and, and you know, my wife, she says, Jim, you're just an old curmudgeon. Every generation said this about the generation coming up. But Sexton, well, actually, it isn't Sexton. It's somebody interviewed for this article. They made a really good point here that Gen Z is different than all previous generations for two reasons. They were stuck at home for 2-3 years for the pandemic, and also the fact they're the first generation that grew up immersed in social media. And in that sense, they are completely different. And in that sense, too, their brains are mush. Uh, there's I talked about this in the past. I can make a legitimate claim to being one of the developers for social media as a computer programmer. I don't discuss it, and I must admit I regret my involvement. I do. I think social media has done more harm than good, although it has done a lot of good too. There's just it's like thing we were talking with Carole about the fact, oppressor versus oppressed, black and white. The world is not a black and white either or duopoly place. It isn't. Everything's very complicated, and it bothers me that people try to get it down. I mean, yeah, if you're making a movie and doing a plot and you only have 2 hours to explain shit, you have to make it black and white. But life isn't like that, you know. So I'm not every Gen Z worker is like this. I'm sure, and maybe, and in that sense, my wife might have a point, because now I don't know how they figured this out, but apparently anthropologists, this is going back all the way to ancient Egypt, but I have no idea how they figured this out at all. But they have said that consistently through the ages, through millennia, you're talking about 10, 12, 15,000 years, that about 5% of the American, or not the American, 5% of the human population has been quote unquote gifted. It's 5%, one out of every 20 people. And apparently that figure is held true through the entirety of human history. I don't know how they figure that out. I have no idea, but I've read that more than one place. So the other thing, speaking about people screwing up, Xi Jinping in China, there are serious, and he, I have to keep in mind he's a premier there for life. He actually has a lifetime title, but it appears that he might be on his way out. There's all sorts of, the media over there are dropping all sorts of hints about stuff that they normally wouldn't do for somebody in his position, and it appears that the communist, the People's Republic Committee, or whatever the hell it's called, I can't remember it. Is a name. The Executive Committee of the Communist Party. It appears they've had enough of him. That they've decided he's incompetent, and they are pushing him out the door. That's the way it looks. There's no external or there's no overt sign of that right now, but there's a whole bunch of little hints that are being dropped all over the place, and it looks like they're going to make a change. That should be interesting, especially considering the fact that God, like I said, just like 2 years ago, they gave him the job for life. And well, life must not mean life or something. I don't think they're going to kill him, are they? And finally, in the UFO news. So, first of all, the Buca sphere. They found this in Buca, Colombia. They found this metal ball flying around through the air. Now, excuse me, pardon me. I get it. Because of the rise of cell phones and the camera in your pocket, people are recording these now all over the world, all over the place. And the implication is that they've been around for a long time. I know you've maybe heard about during World War II, the thing they called Foo Fighters. The Germans thought it was us. We thought it was the Germans, and no one ever found out what they were. And that is these balls that were flying around, circling these airplanes. They were either on fire or steel balls, like the ones we see now. This has been around for like 80, 90 years, documented. But now, in the last 5 years, because of everyone in the world, and literally, do you know how many people in the world have cell phones? It's unbelievable. I think the last I saw was 1 out of every 4 people on the planet. So 2 billion, over 2 billion people on Earth have cell phones. So they're freaking everywhere. And that's because, amazingly, considering the fact that it's a ridiculous technology, it's actually cheaper to make a cell phone than it is to hook up a landline phone. That's actually the reason that everybody has them. And you can get a reasonably decent cell phone at Micro Center or Fry's doesn't exist anymore. What am I talking about? In San Jose, that closed. But you can get a reasonable one for about $135 new. They're not expensive. But people are taking these videos all over the world of these flying steel spheres. So in Buca, Colombia, and there's multiple videos of this from multiple angles from multiple people of this steel ball that was flying around through the air, and they supposedly landed and somebody went and picked it up. Now that's the story. This steel ball, has really weird markings on it, and supposedly no seams or indications of it being assembled. Okay, now I have to preface this or tell you about this that the UFO guy from Mexico TV, Jaime Maussan, is involved in this now, and I have no faith in this guy at all. And the problem is, it's not that he's a complete fraud. He's only a partial fraud, which makes it really, really, this guy, there's no filter at all. He believes and buys every single thing people bring to him. So some of it is real information and some of it is bogus. And that's, I call it the National Enquirer syndrome. In the 1980s, so yeah, 40 years ago, the National Enquirer, after being a supermarket gossip rag for years and years, decided they were actually going to do some real journalism and went out and did some stories. The problem is you have real journalism surrounded by a bunch of crap and you don't know what to believe. And that did them in. They stopped this because, yeah, no one was buying the National Enquirer for the real journalism because no one knew what was real journalism and what wasn't. And so that's my problem with Maussan, is that some of the stuff he's talking about is legit and some of it's crap. The other thing that may be crap is these 2 mummies he rolled into the Mexican Congress and said were mummified skeletons of extraterrestrials. Now, here's the really weird thing about that. The people who know they were found in Peru, apparently. And apparently in Peru, in some cave somewhere, there's a whole bunch of these things. There's like 50 or 60 of these mummies. The really weird thing is that the ones that Maussan brought into the Mexican Congress are almost certainly fake, but some of the ones in the cave that people have found might be real. So yeah, okay, once again, you don't know what to believe. You don't know what to believe. So anyway, okay, so this ball now, okay. The videos of the ball are legit. It was flying around. And this woman says, and I can't remember her name. I don't know where they found her. I think she's even been put up by the government to say this. She said, well, it just looks like somebody's art project. Yeah, and it does, but art projects don't fly. So the thing is, we know there was a steel ball flying around, but we don't. And I have been giving people crap about the fact saying it's not real because we knew there was a steel ball flying around, and we still know that. But I'm starting to think now it might not be the steel ball they've got. That's what I'm wondering. There's a video of some guy going to pick the ball up, but I don't know if that video, that one of all these others, is legit. I don't. That's the thing. The ball they have might be fake, even though the videos of this ball flying around are very legit. And it's a steel. It's not a balloon. It's a steel ball. You can tell. So that's the problem here. It's like, once again, it's like everything's muddled. And this brings me to the next topic on the outline about, maybe you've heard about this, maybe not. Well, about 2 weeks ago, there's an article in the Wall Street Journal where people from the U.S. military come to the journal and said, well, all this stuff people are reporting about the UFOs and the Tic Tac videos and all this, they said it's all misinformation. We have been peddling this for years just to keep people off of our top secret legitimate projects. Now that's crap. That's complete utter crap. But once again, talking about the oppressor versus oppressed, black and white, 1 and 0, some of that's true. And what the thing is, if you've been involved in the UFO investigation as long as I have, as long as other people have, we know the government has done this for sure. Some of that's very definitely true, but all of it, no, absolutely not. No, some of this stuff is very, very legit. So, Eric Burleson, who's he is the what the hell? Missouri. He's from Missouri. He's a congressman from Missouri. He is trying to get to the bottom of all this stuff. And first of all, it should be pointed out that he's an extreme skeptic. He doesn't really believe any of this stuff is from outer space, from other planets. I mean, he's gone on convinced that he says none of these artifacts are real. The mummies aren't real. The sphere is not real. That's his personal belief. That said, he's telling people what other people in the military are telling him, and he's been very very upfront about this. He says, this is not what I believe, this is what I've been told. So and he says somebody in the military has told him that the US military has identified at least 4 different species of extraterrestrials. And the real reason I'm bringing this up is because he's talking about something I've been talking about for quite a while. And Bruce Solheim was on this show about 2-3 weeks ago, and he said he'd never heard anyone bring this up before, about the fact you have to understand and first of all, there's plenty of freaking evidence for this. I mean, at this point, I take it as a given. We are being visited by other people from outer space outside of the solar system. And the thing is, that's the thing. I got to talk about that more in a second. We're being visited. He said that the military's told him they've identified at least 4 different species of extraterrestrials, and the 2 of them, one's called the Nordics. They're very human-like. They can pass as human. They're tall. Apparently they have fairly large blue eyes. They look like weird humans basically, but they can pass as humans. And the gray aliens, the little gray aliens, as he said, he was told they're controlled by other gray aliens. The gray aliens, and that's always been the speculation for a long time. The little gray aliens are biological robots. But at any rate, he said that the Nordics are only a few hundred years ahead of us. They've learned how to fly around faster than the speed of light, but not much more than that. And that basically, technologically, although they're ahead of us, we can relate to them. The gray aliens, on the other hand, the grays, are thousands of years ahead of us, and they're basically doing magic. So you heard about the people who say they've been abducted, and that the aliens, to get them to the spacecraft, will take them through walls and stuff like that. I have to be honest with you. Conceptually, I understand how that would be done. I understand we can't pull that off, but you ever stop and think about this? You can see through glass. Now, you take that completely for granted, but it's a solid object, and most solid objects are not transparent, and yet glass and a few other things are. You can see through them. Well, you could take that one step further and say, well, if I could see through it, maybe I could pass through it, So everyone has experienced this. Say it's like walking through Jello, and my guess is what happens. They have some way of expanding the atomic structure of your body so that it will go through the wall and still stay intact, which is what happens to photons when they go through a piece of glass. The photon goes through there. And I don't know if you know about neutrinos. Neutrinos are so far the smallest subatomic particle that we have identified. And neutrinos go through everything. Neutrinos are not stopped by anything. There's billions of neutrinos that go through your body every single day. You don't know. Nobody knows. This is why they're doing these experiments on neutrinos down in Antarctica, because that's where the place where they can get away from the noise of human civilization, because you want your neutrinos from space. Anyway, the reason I'm bringing all this up is because they said what I've been saying for some time, and that is different extraterrestrial species are at different places of development. And I've said this you're talking about different species that are anywhere from 200 to 2 million years ahead of us. And that's exactly what Burleson was addressing here, or the guy talking to him anyway. He said the Nordic aliens are basically only a few hundred years ahead of us, a couple maybe, and the gray aliens are thousands and thousands of years ahead of us. We've only had electricity for 150 years. You think about that. You've only had an iPhone for 15. So try tacking 1,000 years onto that. See what happens to your technology. Try that. Anyway, the interesting thing about Burleson is that he's fighting for some transparency here, even though he said he personally doesn't believe any of this. So I think that's kind of first of all, I think that's noble and good of him. And secondly, I think that's I admire his honesty, even though, like I said, at this point, the fact that, and I said that we're being visited by people from outside the solar system. One of the problems here, if you want to call it a problem, and the people are talking about this behind the scenes constantly, is that a lot of people think that these people that are coming here are not from outer space, they're from another dimension, which means they don't travel through space, and we don't even know how they travel. And so string theory says there's 11 dimensions to our universe. This just came out last week, and I just talked about this on a previous broadcast. Some scientist in Poland, I think, some physicists has figured out, well, we have 3 dimensions in our universe. Width, height, length. We have 3 spatial dimensions and then time, so 4 of them. But he said there's 3 dimensions to time, which means we have 3 spatial dimensions and 3 time or temporal dimensions. And supposedly doing this basically solves all the mathematical bullshit physicists have been wondering about for 100 years. It becomes what people have been looking for, the unified theory. And it's being laughed at. And I think one of the reasons it's being laughed at is because the people who are doing the math that says, no, it actually does work. It works out. And so what are 3 dimensions of time? Supposedly we live in the middle one. So you have time on a subatomic level, which is kind of like the time version of quantum mechanics, and then you have time on a cosmic level, which is kind of like roughly a version of classical physics, and we live in the middle, supposedly. So we can't experience 1 and 3, but it's a really interesting theory. I mean, this is the thing. People say, well, we don't know how to fly faster than the speed of light. First of all, we do. We just can't manage the energy. But secondly, like, we're never going to discover anything ever again. Like I said, you've had your iPhone 15 years. What if you had it 1,000 years longer? What do you think we'd be doing then? What would be built into your head? And even Burleson in this article is talking about the fact that he's been told by the military the gray aliens control their spacecraft entirely with their minds. There are no physical interfaces. Yeah, well, if you got 20,000 years on us, you could probably do that. You probably figure it out. Look at all the stuff we figured out in 20. The internet's only been around for all practical purposes, 40 years. The commercial internet, 30. I mean, we're just getting started, folks. And yeah, I'm just getting started. And I want to thank you for watching. I want to thank Carole Lieberman for coming tonight. It's been a fantastic conversation with her. I really want to see her research on Trump derangement syndrome, because this is fascinating to me for the longest time. Because I have friends I know people who who hate Donald Trump with a fiery passion. They couldn't really tell you why. They couldn't. I mean, they might come up with something, well, he's an egomaniac, blah, 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 but he seems to be doing it. My thing with the first term is that it actually went pretty well. And finally, after 4 years of BS, people realized that it actually did, which is the reason he got reelected. So I'm curious to see what he's going to come up with. So now we're taking tomorrow, Wednesday, the 2nd and the 3rd off. We're obviously taking Independence Day off, but we take Fridays off anyway. So coming up on Monday, this coming Monday, the 7th, we have Jeff Dornick. He's the CEO of Pickaxe, the Twitter competitor. We'll be talking about AI and stuff like that. And then so what do we got on Tuesday? Let me see. I'm sorry. I forgot to. Tuesday, we got Bill Walton, former CEO of Allied Capital, and he produces a podcast. He's a very, very knowledgeable man. And Wednesday, our 250th show, Tim Conway's going to be here, and we'll have a bunch of other fun stuff too. So that's the coming week. And I can't remember who's on. We are doing a show next Wednesday, next Thursday, and I can't remember who it is. I did not write it down. We're booked a whole month ahead of time, folks. It's unbelievable. Shit's happening, so it's good. It's gonna want to thank you. And it's happening because you're watching. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you very much. I hope you guys have a nice rest of the week. Have a great Independence Day. Don't blow up the fireworks in your hand. Don't do that. I had a friend that happened to lose hand off. You don't want to do that. That's not fun. And yeah, and have some burgers and stuff like that. Have a nice weekend. And I will see you back on Monday, the 7th. Okay? You take care. Good night, Uncle Donnie, wherever you are. And good night to you, wherever you may be. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next week. Take care.